Welcome, everyone, to the Late Night Nerd Show. I'm your host, Katherine, aka the High Heeled Gamer, and I'm super excited to have the gentleman from the Home Brewed Comics. We're going to be talking about Kickstarters and the ups and downs and trials and tribulations of creating a comic. So enjoy the show. So, thank you guys so much for coming to the show and talking about all your projects. The Homebrewed crew, minus a couple, is on today, and I'm beyond excited. So as y'all have known, Casey and Dan do Bigfoot Knows Karate. Chris does Crit. Drew is our newcomer to the show. Brr, 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 brr. Drew, tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so my main character that I brought to Homebrewed when we started the company is called Caspian Porter. So he's kind of like a Han Solo meets Land of the Lost. So starts off very sci-fi and ends very Land of the Lost, but on a prehistoric Mars, 500 million years into the past. I also brought another title over called "Don't Kill Any Monsters," which is currently being solicited through our distributor. It's about a split personality lichen that on one side cleans up after monsters' activities, and the other side is a very power hungry lichen trying to control the monster community. So if you're into classic movie monsters and things like that, this is right up your alley.
Is that what you grew up watching? The classic monster movies?
Yeah, growing up, I was very much into the Sci-Fi Channel, if you guys remember that from the late 80s, 90s. So that was stuff that like that was always playing on Sci-Fi Channel. So yeah, I got into it then. So yeah, very much inspiration for this series.
And as far as comics, was that something that was in your life from an early age, or was that something that you discovered later on in life?
Yeah, it was early. It was early 90s again. Like I grew up in a town called Elkhart, Indiana, and we got our first comic book shop in like 92 or 93. And that comic shop also was a like an indie publisher as well, up until like early 2000s, I think. So that on one hand got me into comics, but it also very much like inspired me to do to make comics to this day. So like very much inspired by that, and yeah.
So with that, did you start right away, once the comic book shop came into town and you discovered comics, were you like, "I can totally 100%, like, do this?" Or was that something, again, that you were maybe teens, early adults that you were like, "Oh, you know what? I actually have a talent for this."
Sort of like when I was younger, I was very much into art when I was younger, and making comics with friends. I was in like middle school, elementary school at the time, but then I got we got our first family computer, and I kind of went down that route up until like I think I might have been about 35, and I like kind of got to this point where I realized I haven't been making comics. I really want to do this, and that's kind of more of like a midlife crisis type thing. So yeah, that's where that kicked off from. So I did go from like being younger up until 35, where I didn't really do much, but
Got it. And how did you get together with these wonderful, talented group of people for Homebrewed Comics?
so I think a lot of us met on like Instagram because that's pretty popular with the indie scene. Chris and I were, during the pandemic and shortly after, we were in another group called Savage Sandbox, kind of a boys group, really trying to figure out how we wanted to keep going. And after that disbanded, we decided to kind of merge, and that's when Homebrewed Comics formed. This was what, a year and a half ago, I think now.
January of 25.
Right. And then we I've met Dan before, through lives and things like that, and I knew Dennis as well. And yeah, it was a good coming of the minds here to form a new company, and yeah, that's where we are now.
That's amazing. So Dan and Casey have a Kickstarter going on right now. So Dan, Casey, tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter.
Sure, we can definitely do that. And then Chris also has his live as well. So we've got, yeah, we're doing Bigfoot Knows Karate God Killer. Bigfoot owes karate god killer. Bigfoot has been accused of the murder of Odin, and heads will roll. I mean, that's just the best way to put it. We've this is our fifth Kickstarter that we've done. We've done the chapters 1 through 3. We did Bigfoot knows karate Hinagon, and now here we are again with God Killer, and everything's going great with it so far. We funded the campaign in under 3 hours. We're working on our second stretch goal right now. We've got, I think we're like less than $100 from the next stretch goal. So things are moving along nicely, and yeah, really excited. Casey wrote an amazing story for this. He really took the lead on the story and the direction of the book itself. And we brought in an artist, Justin Adcock, who is doing the lines on this, doing all the artwork. And then I'm bringing up the rear, doing the colors and helping Casey with dialogue and stuff like that. But Casey really knocked it out of the park on this one, I gotta say.
So was this a natural progression? Or did you get like meaning like you guys already had this story in the bag, or was this a story that kind of developed while you guys were creating the first four?
So with one thing that we realized as we're writing the series, the mini series, is that Benny, the Bigfoot character, I mean, he's lived a long life. There's so many stories that he has and so many things that have developed him. And specifically in this storyline, there is, you realize at one point there was a schism between Benny and some of the more nefarious characters in the main series, and we kind of wanted to show Benny, in one of his one-shot stories where he's in his element, he is just having an adventure on his own, but also kind of get an idea of who Benny is before we knew him, before we're seeing him in the main series. So with Hinagon, it was we really, I had a wild hair at my ass basically, and just wanted to do this story about Benny fighting a dragon. How cool is that shit? That's rad. And then the with God Killer, like the name hit me first, and the idea of Benny existing in the periphery of like the shared consciousness, right? There's always, no matter what culture you're in, there is a big hairy man that lives in the woods away from society, and it exists all over the world. And what we're saying in Bigfoot Knows Karate is that's one dude, that's one guy. He's all over the place. He is around when you least expect him, and so a guy like that has to have stories, right? So with God Killer, I wanted to go like, what would it mean to be a God Killer to somebody like Benny? And so we, just kind of toyed with that idea, bounced it around for a little bit, and just kind of went to Dan. Was like, hey, can I have Benny fight the Norse gods? Because that would be cool. And Dan was like, might be cool. I'm like, yeah, let me. So we just kind of I kind of tossed around a few ideas and built a little story up, and I I think I was a little secretive about this for a little while with Dan, like, oh, I'll show it to you when it's ready, and I'm sure Dan was like, all right, but
Whatever, you'll
I
get
had
it to me when you're ready.
I had a lot of fun writing it, and with Justin, seeing the art, like the pages that I wrote, like come to life, and seeing the things that he's kind of added to it, because when you work on comics, um, it's a team sport unless you're doing everything on your own. Chris does everything on his own. For the most part, like story, art, all that stuff. Dan and I work as a team, and we're pretty simpatico. So working with Dan on the main series has been, we might butt heads every now and then on a script or nothing bad. Just like
Yeah.
eventually I'll just like, yeah, you're right. The
But
fish
y'all
man
have that
That's
shouldn't.
the
that
love,
relation.
dude.
Y'all have those years together. Because it's been what, 3, 4, 5 years? How long has it
Something
been?
like 5 years now. This guy's awesome.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
mean, this guy's awesome. So, didn't mean to
It's
cut you off,
like when
Casey. Go ahead, dude.
oh, no, when you find the right person to work with, man, that's everything. And
Mm-hmm.
Dan has been super easy to work with. And with this one, no, I'm joking. Justin's awesome. Um, it's learning how to communicate differently and kind of figuring out what the artist needs and how they think, and but also like seeing what they provide to the story, because it doesn't end with my words on the page and then he just grabs it and draws it. It's his interpretation of what I'm putting out. And it's always an amazing thing when, like I said, comics is a team sport when you're working with people. And when you see the from the seed of the story that you had to the output of the finished page, and you go like, oh, I didn't even think that. I didn't even think about having that in there. That's amazing. And it's it's like Christmas morning sometimes. It really is. Sorry,
That's a
that
good
was rambling.
analogy. No, no, you're perfectly fine. You're good. And then, as you mentioned, Chris as well has a Kickstarter going on right now. Chris, how many more days left on your Kickstarter?
It just hit 10. So when this airs on Thursday would be what? It'll be 8 days from Thursday.
Okay.
It just
And
hit 57 backers today. Just under $300 away from the next stretch goal.
and tell us a
Nice.
little bit about your Kickstarter as well. Want to get you as much time as possible before you have to dip on
Yeah.
us real quick.
So it is the 10th issue in an ongoing series called Crit, Constantly Running into Trouble. It is based on a superhero D&D campaign that I homebrewed for my friends. So I play the role of trying to kill my friends in every issue. In this issue, they are attacked in their headquarters, which is a coffee shop. If you are new to Crit, they have animals running the coffee shop, not OSHA. Okay, but the animals are involved in this. There's a little robot with a coffee cannon. There's tons of superhero mischief and a villain who controls people by singing. And he's like Eddie Mercury if Eddie Mercury were a gangbanger. The entire series revolves around the game. So everything you read happens organically at our table. I record it and then turn it into a comic book. So it's not traditional writing like what everybody else on this panel does. I just record game sessions and try to figure out how to turn that into a comic book. This is the 10th issue, so it's a milestone for me and the team. I do all the writing, all the art, all the lettering, and Louise comes behind me and he colors. Say thank God, because I'll tell you what, trying to do everything on a book is not fun. But like I said, this is 10 years. I launched the first one in 2020 in April, and here we are, April. I launched the 10th. So 6 years, 10 books, and we only have 32 more to go.
Only 32.
Only
I
32.
could be more grateful than that because I have comics 1 through 9. I was wondering, I got 1 through 8, I believe, on the 9th Kickstarter. Do you have that reward as well for this Kickstarter?
Yes. So if you have 1 through 8, you have everything. When we went to retail, as Drew was talking about before, I had to break issue 5 into 2 books because it's too big for retail. It was almost 60 pages long. And so at that point, we had just actually created Homebrewed Comics. Before that, I was Homebrewed Heroes. So when we did the rebrand, I said, well, I'll break issue 5. So actually on the last Kickstarter, I did do and like an ultimate edition of that where we redid the end of the book. And so when it goes to retail, it will be 2 books. It will turn into 5 and 6. So after this campaign, I will no longer print any previous editions of 5, 6, 7, or 8. They will turn into 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So if you have those will be collector's editions. Those will never be printed again. Um, so yes, for everybody out there that listens and says, "Oh, well, I only have through 8," you do have the complete collection. It will be renumbered for Homebrewed Comics for distribution, and moving forward after this Kickstarter, those will not be printed ever again. Most of those covers will never see the light of day. So you all have pretty cool collector's items. Issue 5 was at the time it was like an opus for me because I I think issue 5 may be one of my favorite issues because my art grew so much. Um, one of my critics, I call them. I have a handful of critics that I send all my art to, and they give me positive, they give me negative feedback, and I love it all. Um, but it was the first time one of them said, "You don't need me anymore." Was issue 5, um, and the story in issue 5 really closes out that first chapter. So issues really now 1 through 6, you will learn everything you need to know about the characters in Crit, and moving forward, you just get to experience the whole story. Um, when I started this idea of turning it from tabletop to comic book, it was kind of like a how do I put this? It was a struggle because I didn't know if I wanted to focus on the universe that Crit is in or if I wanted to focus on the characters. And so I I decided real early that everyone needed to experience Crit from the player's perspective because it is a tabletop game. And when you play tabletop, you are the player, you're involved. It's all you only see this. And the DM is the one that builds that world around you and reacts to everything you do. And so there's things that, like me as a DM, I would have these big ideas that would eventually either not come to fruition or I'd have to change based on what they did. And so I said, well, I want the reader to feel like they're the player. And so that's why everything always follows the character. After book 5, well, about now book 6, you really get to experience some of the outside world. There's news reporters, there's bigger things than just following Crit because as a reader, do I want you to be invested in the world of Crit or in the actual characters? And I decided it would be the characters. So, this issue 10 is probably the most fighting I've had to draw. I just planned 4 pages and I actually text Louise and I was like, dude, have fun with these next 4 pages because it's just um it's tons of fighting, more fighting than I've ever drawn in panels, and I've drawn quite a bit of fighting. And I had to resort back to I have action figures that I used to begin with, and I wasn't getting my modeling programs to do what I wanted them to do. So I just grabbed some action figures real quick, and I was like, "How does this chokehold look with like this?" Because I don't have someone around me to choke out, unfortunately. Um, and I actually have texted the guys from the campaign because people don't know this, but Brad, who is a cop, or in he his caliber in real life, he's a cop. He is a black belt in like 7 forms of martial arts, and um, he him and Terrell also are working on a mixed martial arts together. Terrell's a wrestling coach. He's a Olympic wrestler. He still holds one of the an Olympic like highest score or something for something that he did. Yeah. Um, so everything that these guys have in their characters is actually them. And so I will text them sometimes and say, "Hey, look at these panels. Does this look right?" And they'll be like, "No, that arm's out of place," or "No, like if I hit him in the face that way." Yeah. They're a little bit like you hear some people talk about when they draw guns and finger control and all that stuff and trigger control. and I'll text them, and Brad will be like, "Hey, can you take my finger off the trigger? Because I'm not shooting anybody in that panel." So it's kind of cool to have that kind of feedback from the people that are these characters. And so if you like one of them, you actually probably would like this person in real life. Um, or if you think they're, kind of terrible, like I get a lot of like, oh, would Spectre really do that? Austin probably would own a coffee shop and be a warlock and like put the animals to work because he would have so much fun playing with his little Pokemon all day.
What did the players of the D&D say when did you present this idea to them first, or did you do the idea and then present it to them like, "Ta-da, look what I did?"
So the original issue 0 that has seen some light of day. Um, and I say some because it's like a special edition, very embarrassing for me now as an artist. Proud of where I came from. Um, I did that. I was very proud of it. I showed it to them and they were like, "Oh, that's cool." And nobody really thought I was going to do anything with it until I invested like $1,000 in an iPad, and then I have a Kickstarter going, and then I'm finishing the book, and they're like, "Oh, he's really going to do this." And I sent them everything, and they were like, "Hey, can we edit this? Because this needs some work." And I was like, "I mean, I've been over here doing it. You're more than welcome." So we got in, and they gave me some critiques, and we really started editing it as a team. And then they thought it was a one and done. And then I'm launching issue 2, and they're like, "Wait a minute, how many of these are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I'm doing the whole campaign." They're like, "How long is that?" I'm like, I'm planning to be 42 because I'm a big fan of the
Hitchhiker's Guide.
thank you, Hitchhiker's Guide. And so the number 42 is like a big thing. If you like Hitchhiker's Guide, you'll understand. And so I was like, it's got to be 42. And they didn't believe me. And then issue 3 comes out, and then issue 4 comes out, and now it's just like, okay, cool. They're like, "Chris," then they actually said recently, they're like, "Do you think you could kind of like consolidate some of it, because we want it to be finished before you die?" But I do have contingencies. Yeah, I have contingencies. My daughter has she can finish it. I've also tasked Dennis, because even though he's older than me, he'll probably outlive me. Dennis will finish it. The guys in Homebrewed Comics have if I die for some reason, you just got to finish Crit for me. Everything's loaded into a drive, all the recordings. It's in my will that you have to. So sorry.
It's a must. I love that. I love that they're supportive and they help you out as well. And they kind of don't really like inflate your ego per se. Because had it been me, I would have been jumping up and down like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I'm gonna be in the comic." They're like, "Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's cute. Like, do you?" So I think that's pretty awesome that they're supportive in a way that keeps you humble, keeps you grounded, and they help. It's not like it's just like, "Oh, Chris is doing his thing." They want to make sure that you've that you're putting your best work out there. Um,
I
how
surround
important
myself with people that humble me.
I was gonna say, how important is that to surround yourself with people that,
No, I prefer people that don't. I don't like yes men. You know, i- i- Everyone that's always been around me, I want the truth. I don't want to be fed what you think I want to hear. If it hurts, it hurts. I'd rather be hurt. I grew up with a mom that said I'd rather be hurt by the truth than be happy with a lie. And so, and that goes back to this fun story that I've never told anybody on this panel, I don't think. My nickname in high school was Crazy Sail Off. And it was because I would do every weekend. I was young. I been working since I was 13. I actually made really good money for the 90s. And I would do the dumbest things, and I drank a lot. So there was this one time I went to a concert, Aerosmith, and my friends lied to me. I got beat up real bad. I mean, like real bad. And the next morning, I'm like, I don't remember. And they're like, you bum rushed the stage. Now, I did bum rush the stage. I never made it to the stage. Um, but I did get beat up real bad in the crowd because I was so annoying as a drunk. They just made people beat me up and said I was saying all this stupid stuff. But forever, I thought that I had jumped on stage and hugged Steven Tyler. So I said that for like my entire senior year of high school. And then at graduation, one of my buddies was like, "Hey, I just need to tell you the truth. You never hugged Steven Tyler. You were just really annoying." And I was like, why didn't you just tell me that? You know, I was like, now I've told the whole school 100 times I hug Steven Tyler, and I never really had to go back and tell anyone, but I was like, man, I would much rather have known I was like that annoying drunk than that I actually hugged Steven Tyler. It was like the biggest letdown of my life. And I had quite a few, but that one still sticks to me this day. It's like, man, I really wish I had jumped on stage and got beat up for hugging Steven Tyler.
That's that's a really great story actually. Um, but it seems like you all and obviously there are a few people missing from the homebrewed comics world, but what was the point for you, Drew, that made you realize, oh wow, like these people are the people I need to surround myself with?
I think it was at a point like for Chris and I think we hit a point in our last group. We were just like, where are we going with this? We're churning the same things over and over, doing the same Kickstarters, rinse and repeat, kind of feeling a bit down on making books. I was about ready to give up, to be honest. And then Chris and I were just talking about a merge, and we just kind of started with us and getting things going, and instantly got hooked up with Dan, the marketing whiz over here. And then, hey, don't look at that. And Dennis as well. So like we just clicked. I mean, we all work well together, and we can all be honest with each other. Like Chris says, we're not afraid to criticize each other's work. We don't take it personally or anything. We want to grow as a group and continue to level up. That's our goal every year. We want to level up.
Mhm. Yeah, and, that's what I was gonna that's a good thing that you said that is it's not that it's critique to make you feel bad about yourself, it's because each person wants to see the other succeed and they know what you're capable of. They see that talent that you have and they push you for that talent. Um, when you first started making comics, were you able to receive it like that? Were you always naturally like a receiving of criticism, feedback, critiques kind of a person, or was that something that you learned through the making of comic books?
I don't know. To be in the beginning, I was very much on my own. This was, pre-pandemic, where I was just, throwing books out there, making them and then moving on and not really taking it too seriously. I didn't get too much feedback until I started like connecting with people on Instagram, and like I was getting some feedback and like reviews on like Amazon and things like that, but I really got more from the Instagram crowd, learning through these guys, some of it through some of the artists I've worked with through the years. I tend to work with a lot of the same guys, and they can usually be real with me. So,
Okay. Um, Dan, so with this Kickstarter, you say, hey, um, with this Kickstarter, what is the next can or are we at the next part of our phase now that this Kickstarter has launched? Or are you kind of like the person that's the Kickstarter's here, I'm focusing just on the Kickstarter, the next project can wait?
Oh, well, like we're finishing up this book right now. Book four has already been written. Okay, and that's over to the artist who's picking up for me on that issue. So we have Domenico Pagano who's working on the art for book four currently. I think he's up to page 9 or 10 or something like that. And then I'll be picking up on that and coloring him as soon as I get done finishing up God Killer. So we're rolling on that. That's gonna hit Kickstarter in October of this year, and then when he's done with the artwork on, yeah, we may take a small break from book four, but we're working on a pitch book at the same time. Dominico and myself and Casey are doing an animation pitch Bible right now that we can present for animation, pushes and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens with that. But so Dom's doing an amazing job. If you're not familiar with his artwork, He was the artist who worked on the Bigfoot Knows Karate story for Homebrewed Zero. That was kind of like his dipping his toe in the water, seeing how that worked with him doing the artwork, with me coloring him. It worked out nicely, I think. I think we had a good little marriage going there on that story. So picking up and working with him on book 4 is going to be amazing. But yeah, right now, we're just focusing. I'm trying to focus on getting God Killer pages colored, and Justin finishing up the last couple pages that he's got to do, and getting this out there because we really can't go to Kickstarter until we get this one fulfilled. Go to back to Kickstarter with another book until we fulfill this one. So it's all hands on deck. Let's get this book done. I am taking a vacation, at the beginning of June. Sorry, y'all, but it has to happen, and then I will come back and finish the book. But yeah, really excited about it. I mean, just a different vibe in this story, a completely different vibe from what we do in the main storyline. So, which makes it a lot of fun. Hey, Case, you back, bud? Hey, he made it. All right. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, no, but and real quick, regarding Homebrew and all that, the Homebrew team's been extremely supportive. We try and support each other's books like they're our own. We always say, each homebrewed book is everybody's book is a homebrewed book, and we really try and push each other's projects and make sure that we're getting the word out there for each of the campaigns, whether it's Kickstarter or stuff we're releasing just on our website. Whether that be Homebrewed Zero or doing tin cans, stuff like that. We always want to get these books out there and seen because they all fall under the Homebrewed brand, and so it's really important that everybody's getting some shine and everybody's getting seen, and we're turning we're getting people picking up these books. So very thankful to the team for sure.
Yeah. When we came together, Drew had it right. I was just tired of doing everything by myself, tired of, you know, it's one thing to do a comic independently at your own pace with no goals. Let's um that's that's not good. Um but like, I'll look at it from, I'm trying to word this in a way that addresses kind of like a bigger thing within the indie community, right? So making a comic book is, in the idea, easy. You have a concept, you create the art, you letter the book, you send it out. Most people think making a comic book is that easy. They don't realize that when you're trying to make a comic book that is for the public, for mass producing, something you want to grow, something that you actually want to be proud of, it takes more than that. It takes editing, it takes marketing, it takes, you know, a whole team of people to produce that. And there's so many of us out there that just do it by ourselves. And after 3 to 5 years of Kickstarters, of buy my book for a month, check out my Kickstarter for a month, jumping on podcasts. When you're not on podcasts, you're looking at a script. When you're not looking at a script, you're drawing. Like, there's all these different aspects to it, and it's tedious, it's tough, it beats you up. There's days when you get a review and you're on cloud nine. There's days you look at your Kickstarter and it hasn't moved in 4 days and you think you suck. Um, it's it Making comics is not for the weak-willed person. Um, it is tough. And I've said this on many interviews. In 2020, everybody thought they could make a comic book. And we had tons of people with great ideas coming to Kickstarter. Some bad ideas too, but let's be real. There was a ton of good comics on Kickstarter that died, that never went anywhere. We got one book and they went away because it's hard. And that's nothing to them, but it's even harder when you have to go back to work. It's even harder when your wife goes back to work too. It's even harder when now your kids are back in school. Drew has 3 kids, right? In 3 different sports, 2 kids in sports. 4
So you
different
get 4
sports.
different sports.
I've got 3 kids. One of them is in, and you know her, Audrey is every other week, got a concert, she just got her license this week in a car. So that's just even, you know what I mean? But like when you've got kids in school, there's so
What?
many other, yeah, she just got her license.
You
And a
know,
Yeah.
car?
And
She's
she had a car.
driving the
She
street.
drove
Oh
over from
my
Mother's Day.
God.
Yep. I
Oh my
couldn't be more
God.
proud of this
All right.
kid.
Absolutely.
You know, and then we have 2 more that are in taekwondo and ukulele and chess club and you know, and as they get older, there's more. So you got to think as independent creators, we, the 3 of us, and then Dennis, have families, have responsibilities, have all this stuff, and it just beats us up. So when we came together, when I talked to Drew, I was like, hey, I want to take workload off of you when you're busy. I want you to take workload off of me. And we realized real soon that he's great in the digital world. You know, he's a programmer. We got some big things coming to Homebrewed Comics website this year, thanks to him. In the background, like I know if I said if it exists in a digital universe of things, and I went to Drew and I said, hey, can we make this work? He's going to dive in and figure that out. On the other side of things, I grew up in physical medium. You know, I was in distribution. I know those contacts I have. I know how to navigate that world pretty well. So I took over the physical side of things. And that's also, you know, contacting our printers, like just managing conversation with a printer for someone is a big deal. Chris has that handled, you know, when it comes to the digital distribution of things. Drew has that handled. And then we had Dan in, and one of the biggest complaints people have is marketing, you know, and Dan has the marketing background. So it's like, hey, we have a Kickstarter coming up. Dan, he knows the branding. We have specific homebrewed branding. Dan, I need, you know, graphics made up for our campaigns. We need that done. Dan gets on it. And now he can send that to me and I don't have to worry about that. I can navigate, okay, we have this order, this order, this order, this goes to this person, this goes to distribution, this goes over here. And then Drew's in the background working on what he does. And then we have Dennis, who when he came on, Dennis is like, if you've ever seen Office Space, he's a people person, right? And we're like, what do we do with Dennis? So we get the Whatnot show going. And I struggled with the title for him and I said, just make up a title. I don't want to call you like the people guy, you know, like the VP of people. Like, what do you do? And he's our outreach, right? So and my goal for Dennis was to be able to build a team of people that help grow the brand organically, you know, like grassroots promotion kind of things, because you need a face of the company. And if you know Dennis, there's nobody better to be the face of a company than Dennis. He is that people guy. I mean, he can bite your head off if he needs to, but he's a nice dude and he has an awesome comic. And so when we put all this together, for us, it was we trust each other. We trust each other to get done what we need to do. And I know that if I'm struggling with something and I say, guys, I need to take a step back for a minute, can you handle some of this stuff? They'd say, sure, give me the contact. I'll handle those communications, right? Um, just just like some of us have things that go on, you know, we'll have a message, hey, this week at work sucks. If I'm quiet, this is why. And immediately it's like, hey, what can we help with? What do you need us to do? You know, I think Dan went on like a 10-day trip. And I'm like, let me help you out with some of those graphics because you won't have a laptop. You know what I mean? And like the website, people talk about the website, and that's these two, you know, that's them. And they work together in tandem to get that done. Now, Dan overhauled the website. Drew kind of gets in there and messes with the coding and makes things look cool. But, you know, they work together on it. So while we all have our own lane, we all kind of cross streams, as Dennis loves to say, and help each other out. And a lot of the indie community doesn't have that. And, you know, we talk about the idea of bringing other people on, but we've learned through trial and error that we need to protect this group, you know,
If it
because
ain't broke, don't fix it.
right now, would I love to help other publishers out? And I've had conversations with them. I'd love to, but I think that right now we have such this strong brand of people that bringing anything else in right now would be tough because you got to be able to pull your own weight as well. You know, like Dan didn't come to me and say, hey, I want to publish this Kickstarter, and I've got everything done. Chris, just do it. Right. People think that when you get on a publisher, that everything is now, maybe when you read a book, like a novel, send off the publisher and they just take care of everything. That's great because, you have essentially like so many, I think printing novels these days is easier than it used to be. So getting a distributor and a publisher for a novel sounds much easier than a comic book because people don't just 1 out of 10 will pick up a cover and go, yeah, this is a cool comic. I'm going to read it. But how'd you get to the store? How did you get that store to buy your book? And that's tough. That needs you. Okay. Dan can write Bigfoot Knows Karate with Casey, and they can draw it and they can do all the stuff they want to do. And they go and hand it to me and they say, Chris, sell my book. I'm going to get on a live and I'm going to have an email and say, hey, here's Bigfoot Knows Karate. I'm not going to have the passion behind it that they have. When you talk about Caspian Porter and Drew, I wouldn't have that passion. Now, could I sell their book? Yes, of course. After the con we did of 3 days of listening on repeat their pitches, I can. But even at my own cons, when I have their books, I sell my book faster because when you ask me about my book, no matter what, I'm going to be more passionate because I did it. And I'm not saying that I don't try to sell theirs, but if you
No,
listen to
that
me
makes
talk,
sense.
right? My last con, I owe Dan a few bucks for some Bigfoot Knows Karate. Dan is one of the few of us that are blessed with a title of a book that goes, what? Let me pick that up. But that's Dan, like the man. Wait, who came up with Bigfoot Knows Karate, Dan or Casey? Since we have you here, let's establish this. Okay.
Yeah, it was in 2014 when I came up with the title, actually. So it was supposed to be a comedy that lived in the Latex Avenger universe, and it was terrible. So it just got shelved. And I liked the title. I kept it pinboarded over there and on the pinboard, and then it just stayed there until about 2017. Started doodling the character on Instagram. This guy was like, "What are you going to do with it?" I don't know. I kept drawing it, and he's like, "What are you going to do with it?" I'm like, "I don't know." And then eventually he forced me into writing a story, and then he said he'd edit it, and then it turned into a whole thing, and here we are today. So sorry, long answer to a
Oh,
short question, Chris.
no. I mean, like but see what I'm saying? Like Bigfoot Knows Karate came from something as small as that, and now when you say it, we'll be at a con. I'll say Crit constantly running in trouble. We can say Caspian Porter. We can say Celestial Knight, and those all sound cool. Someone says Bigfoot Knows Karate, and immediately someone's like, I know Bigfoot. How does Bigfoot know karate? Like tell me about. And it's such a conversation starter. But not everybody has that title. Not everybody has. There are a few out there. Like there's a Cthulhu Invade series. That's another one that I know
Yeah.
off the top of my head that I'm like, oh, I want to look at that because we all know Cthulhu and what's he invading. So not everybody knows what does that mean? Grit, crip. That was another one I heard. And
No way.
so but not everybody has that title that's gripping. And so if you're looking for someone to publish your work and you don't have a title as unique and catchy as that, you need to push that book. And what I love about our group is we get in, Dan and I have Kickstarters running simultaneously right now. I'll say, hey, I'm going to collab with you. If you can't collab because you got your own thing going on, great. Or I might say, hey, like, I need a push right now. All other things pause. Let's push this. And he'll do the same thing. Hey, like, all other things pause. It's the launch of Bigfoot Knows Karate. Today is the day.
Yeah.
All things go pause. Cool. Because we respect each other and we respect each other's, calendar of events because we all plan things. But we're all out there sharing, multiplying, and growing. Because one thing I continually say, and I've said it since the first day Drew and I talked, a homebrewed comic is a homebrewed comic. It's as much mine, Dan's, Drew's, Dennis's as anybody's. If it fails, we all fail. If it succeeds, we all succeed. Okay. So and we're blessed. 2 years in a row, we funded 3 campaigns. Burlap is not a homebrewed comic. We presented that. We helped Jesse get back into the publishing field. We presented that first one. We really helped him get back in there. And I'm happy that he is sober and doing his thing again. And I'm really glad that we could bring Burlap into color. I will forever own in the back of my head the idea for Burlap and Technicolor, and I'm very happy that it came to fruition. But once he fulfills that, we're not distributing that for him. We just wanted to help him get all of that going. But we still had a hand in that. And then we launched Crit and we funded Crit. And then we launched Bigfoot Knows Karate and we funded that. And last year we did the same thing. We launched 3 in the beginning of the year, all funded. And you see other groups that go in and you don't have the 50 people that are involved pushing those books like they're their own.
Mhm.
And that's what separates us. If anybody wants to know what Homebrewed Comics is about, it's about our books. It's about our group, our unity. When he was doing Tin Can, he's like, that's going on the website. We're like, let's get that thing out there.
Yep.
We don't really talk about Tin Can as much as anything else, but Tin Can exists in Homebrewed Comics, and it's a fun story. And if you haven't really gone to our website and picked the copy up, it suffers because we don't have a Kickstarter, so we're not out there going buy my book. But Tin Can is a lot of fun. And I'm still waiting for Drew to use the cover I drew for the Don't Kill Any Monsters book. Maybe one day I'll get a variant out there. But
It'll happen.
True. But
But
this is all available at our website, homebrewedcomics.com. So go check
which
that
will
out.
be in the description. I'm gonna have all
Yes,
them links for
perfect.
everybody because I want one, with the exception of Drew, which I will get to read one of your comics, I promise. I have read everybody else's work, so I can only imagine that Drew's is just as good as you guys as well. I have high expectations when it comes to you guys. So sorry, Drew, you're lumped in with them, and I have high expectations because I love Crit, I love Bigfoot Knows Karate. And it sounds like you guys are a well-oiled machine, and you guys figured it out through some bumps, obviously, because y'all have to learn how to what each other's strengths are, what each other's weaknesses are. Those are important things as well. And you did touch a little bit on it. When you have a rough patch, you can write it in the group chat that you guys have, like, hey, today was a rough day at work. But how do you get over those rough patches? How do you, go, this is my dream, this is my passion, I want this to happen? Like, how do you get
I
over
want to
that
say one
hurdle?
thing before we answer that, because I was trying not to interrupt you, but I want to give you an idea of what Caspian Porter is. Han Solo meets Corbin Dallas.
He said
Okay.
that. Yeah, he said that.
Yeah. So I struggled for a long time trying to figure out what I could pitch Caspian as. And I was watching The Fifth Element one day, and it was like after I'd read his 3rd book, and I'm like, Corbin, my man. And that's just where I got it. Also, my group references Fifth Element so many times that I now see Caspian Porter when I watch that movie. Sorry, I had to interrupt you with that.
No, please. No sorries needed. We're trying to get to, when I say we, is my audience and myself, even though I do kind of know you guys, we want to get to know you guys way more. You know what I'm saying? Because yes, we can, and I'm not like what I'm about to say, y'all know how I talk. We can see your artwork, we can see your books, we can see, what you guys bring to the table, but it's also important to see who you guys are. Why is this brought to the table? Who put this at the table? And a lot of the people that watch my show are people that are scared to do their comic book because they have the idea. So it's important to show, the fun side, the tough side, the crazy side. And I'm glad that you did touch on the fact that, you have to know a lot about not just creating the comic, but marketing it, selling it, promoting it. You talked about, 2020, everybody wanted to become a comic book writer. And I'm like, everybody wanted to become a streamer as well, too. And they forget that. And I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend any different. I can write, but I can't draw. But they forget that it's more than just putting on a game. You have to have some type of personality behind the game that you're playing. You have to be able to tell your story as well as the story that you're watching through gameplay. And then once you're done playing the game, you have to sit there and edit it so you can promote it, so you can, people come to the stream. So it's almost the same type of pace that you guys have to, do. But I'm glad that you were very honest and very open about the fact that, hey, you could write a comic day in and day out, but you gotta promote the bitch, you know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta let people see that, hey, because what's the point of writing the comic if nobody's gonna get to it? You see what I'm saying? So that's why I was wondering,
Sure.
like, when it comes to, like, difficult moments, like you say, you day 4 and the Kickstarter hasn't moved, like, how do you get past that mindset of, "Oh, shit, like, am I doing bad? Like, what can I" how do you get over that hurdle?
I'll speak because I mean I kind of hit that wall, and it doesn't bother me at all. Dan and I had to talk about it today. Um, just because my campaign isn't moving doesn't mean Homebrewed Comics isn't. I mean, Dan's is crushing it right now, and I have zero envy, zero jealousy, none of that you see in other groups or any other I I don't see Dan's campaign as competition for mine. I see Dan's campaign as a comic book we're publishing that's crushing it right now, and I couldn't be more proud of him and his team. When we launched his book, I didn't even if we had not mentioned Crit that day, it would not have upset me, you know, because it's about Bigfoot knows karate. It's about Dan's progress and Casey and the fans they've built. And when I look at what if my campaign stalls for a few days, I'm thinking of like ideas on making things move. And one thing that I know in the back of my group, Drew's looking at the campaign, Dan's looking at the campaign, Dan sends out an update, Drew sends out an email blast. It's not just me going, man, my campaign hasn't moved. It's these guys saying, what can we do to get some traction over there? And what I'm very happy about with that, Dan's campaign is moving along real well, and he takes the time to say, okay, well, let me push Crit a little bit over here. Let me put Crit in my story. Let me do an update, tag Crit in there. A lot of people don't do that kind of stuff, but with Homebrew, that's what we do. And I know Drew's like already got a newsletter planned and fixing my mistake of putting the wrong date on something again. Um, but I mean, realistically, you're talking about like what does this group do? I had marketing and I had a whole video today that I posted, and Drew's like, "Hey man, you have the wrong date." And I was like, "Oh crap!" I had to go and fix it real quick, and I had to fix the whole graphic and everything. So it wasn't like I just had to fix some text. I had to take the whole thing down, redo the whole graphic, put it back up, and there at no point in time was it like, "Oh, this is Chris's problem," like they could have just easily, if that was a group of people, ignored that, let me go on with it, with the wrong date on there. But the question did arise, like, did that hurt my campaign because I had a graphic up for about 5 days with the wrong date on? Did that hurt me? I don't know. It could have. But we also, and I talked to Dan about this. Crit is a superhero book. It's in a different category as Bigfoot Knows Karate and as Caspian Porter. If I was going up against Caspian Porter right now, campaign time wise, when I say go up against, there would be no against because it's a sci-fi book. You know what's coming out right now? If we launch Caspian Porter at the same time as a Star Wars movie's coming out, it's gonna blow up. Why? Because everyone's like, oh, sci-fi. That's just it. But we don't sit there at any point in time and go, my book isn't doing well. We go, what are we doing as a team? And right now, Homebrew's crushing it. Couldn't care less where Crit's standing. Homebrewed is doing great. Every time I get on a show with anyone, they talk about what Homebrewed is doing, not what Chris Saloff is doing. Because no, I don't care what I do. I care what Homebrewed does. You know, I'm so proud of everybody on here. We have a crossover, and think about this. You talk about we started last year at a year, right? The struggles we've had. I won't go into Drew. But there was a point in time where Drew needed to take a step back, and it was like 2 months in, 3 months in. He's like, I need to take a step back, and I was on the phone with him. I'm at the gym, and I'm sitting there, and I was waiting for a call from him because if there's one thing I will say that I'm very good at reading people. It I've been on my own since I was 13. I've had to navigate a lot of relationships in my life, and I can understand like body language, communication language without words. And I knew he was struggling a little bit, and I knew he was pulling back, and I was just waiting for him to say he wanted to like step down or step away. And I'm like, no, you're not. What can you commit to, and what can we do for you, because you're part of this group. So as long as you can commit to this and that's what you do, we won't ask anything else of you. That's it. I make fun of him because he's never on lives, but he said, hey, I have like all this other stuff going on. I can't do as many lives as you can. Right. I mean, I have a 16-year-old daughter and a girlfriend with kids that lives 45 minutes away. I can do whatever I want. Dan's kids are grown up. He can do pretty much what he wants. So let's bear that weight for you. But at the same time, what can you do? And he comes through every time. There's not a question about it. So those struggles that we have internally, like Dennis is working tonight. Hey guys, I can't show up. We're not going to ignore Celestial Night. Celestial Night's a big part of this series. It's the first crossover we had was Caspian Porter and Celestial Night. We talk about what titles we have. Celestial Night represents our traditional superhero book, your Kate book. And when you come to Homebrewed Comics, it's not just a bunch of indie comics of immortal characters that never die and stories that are convoluted and make no sense. No, like we would not be working together if we didn't like the content here. And struggles of writing. I've hit a brick wall before and been like, what do I do with this page? And somebody pops in. Okay. We wrote Homebrewed 0 individually, but collectively. Right? Right there. That was a collaboration of independent individual stories. And there's one thing that we messed up on, and that's Drew and Dan should have coordinated better because their enemy could have.
Oh man. We both ended.
Dan, you're muted. You're muted.
We both had what?
Yes, dude. We should have. So Casey, I don't know if you noticed in Homebrewed 0, but Drew had a little red monster at the end of his too, and we should have like coordinated those monsters because we could have had the same creature in those two things. But still, it was awesome. I mean, seriously, that made me laugh when I read yours. I was like, that's cool. That was awesome.
When we were all putting our stuff out there, it was a really fun project to be part of, because generally when you're doing these collaborative 6-page efforts, it's just get it done and move on because it's only 6 pages. But like we were really invested in each one of our stories.
Well, along with the chase, it was the chase book in our campaigns, but the coupons and the ripping off Image 0.
I love Dan came up with the idea. Homebrewed 0 was Dan's baby. The marketing for Homebrewed 0 was Dan's baby. Everything was Dan's baby. And, like, I think we have like other ideas for other collaborations and other things that we want to do moving forward. But and he was like, yeah, I remember how an Image, and we're just going to do Image 0, but Homebrewed 0, and it's going to be done right. And you're not going to have just cover art and stories that are already printed 3 other places.
I love that. I love
no
the
shade
fact
thrown
that
whatsoever.
You guys have such a great mindset when it comes to working together and working as a team. It's more than just, like you said, Chris, you have your own thing. Dan and Casey, you have your own thing. You guys have y'all's thing together, almost like a good stew, homebrewed stew, if you will. Like it has to have different parts in order for it to work. And I respect the hell out of all of y'all for coming together, knowing each other's strengths, being able to also be like, hey, I can't do this, help me out, or I'm not feeling right, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, work sucks type of thing, and you guys respect that and step up for each other. It's a brotherhood, and I think that's amazing. I think it doesn't seem to happen very often. There's always either a pairing or somebody solo. So to see a group just come together and support each other, it's not a competition. It's just each other pushing for the best of what your abilities and talents are. It's really impressive. I'm sitting here like on cloud nine, like, oh my God, this is like the coolest conversation I've had. Like, let me just say that. And it's impressive, because a lot of times it's easy to focus on your own thing. Um, it's easy to want to obviously take care of just your baby, but the fact that y'all are taking care of your projects and then helping each other's projects, it says a lot about your characters and your mindset as well too, because it's important to have that kind of mindset because comic book, whether you're reading it, creating it, it's a community. It's mind like people coming together for the love of the story of the character. I mean, I know y'all see this mess of long boxes behind me. It's respect for the game too. Um, so when it comes to do you guys have like a schedule or meaning you're like, I'm gonna take this week to do my Kickstarter, Dan, whenever you fit in here, or is it like, hey, I'm doing my Kickstarter this week, and Dan's like, funny enough, I'm doing mine this week as well. How do you guys coordinate that?
This was figured out 6 months ago,
Damn.
at least that we were going to
No.
do that. These are the dates. We already know our next round of dates in the fall too. I
Oh
mean,
wow. Okay.
yeah, no, we have everything planned out ahead of time. I mean, you got to understand, like they said, we stay in our lanes, but we help each other out. I couldn't do this shit by myself as a with like distribution, because we have distribution in stores too. I couldn't have figured that fucking mess out. These guys are incredible. I mean, seriously, Chris and Drew, they get me through that shit every time I have an issue that has to go out to. Drew has to walk me through the freaking
Drew
spreadsheet,
formats the
and
stuff.
Chris.
I can't.
Oh my
I have
God,
no
yeah. I
patience.
mean, yeah, no, he gets me through the spreadsheet. Chris handles the printers, all these things like that. And I can sit over here, just kind of spinning on my chair, going, all right, because I didn't have to do that. And, but then again, we all have other things we do for each other to make sure that our books are getting seen and successful and all the other things that go along with it. I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, I got to say, Kat, you've known Casey and I for years now,
Yeah.
and you've known these guys for years now in different forms and fashions, and now you see all of us hanging out together, and it's like, hey, look at the cool kids, look at us go.
Yeah.
But I mean, seriously, it where we all started off like in the 2020 time period to where everybody is now. It's pretty incredible watching, who stayed in the game, who dropped off, who's, come together and making moves, who's just kind of doing their thing, who, you know what I'm saying? And, we're really trying to make some
Yeah.
strides as a group and get the individual books out, but own them like they're all of our own. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
and creatively everybody's doing their own thing, but from a marketing company standpoint, we're all there for each other.
I
And
find it just fascinating because again, like you mentioned, I've known you guys with the exception of Drew. I just met Drew. I've known you guys for years, and one thing that like I find fascinating is I'm always learning something about you guys. I'm learning something from you guys, and you guys like always step it up. Like I love your story. Then the second one is like just as good and just as great, and I'm like, okay, give me the third one. The third one appears, and I'm like, yeah, y'all blew it at the one. You know what I'm saying? Like so I think that's another thing too that I appreciate about you guys and your art form and your talent is that I'm never bored and I'm still learning from you guys and I'm still learning about you guys and I appreciate that as a fan and as a friend because sometimes shit could get stale and you just be like ah whatever but, the fact that this is, our 100th time talking, and I'm like, "Oh, shit, I didn't know that about you guys. Oh, shit, I didn't know that about the" you know what I'm saying? So, like, I appreciate the fact that you guys are that talented and that if like, y'all evolve and grow, that I'm still impressed by you guys like I was day one. So, thank you for that.
what
Want to
I
learn something new? You want to learn something new? You want to see my web toe? No, I'm kidding with you. But anyway,
what I've loved is, we talk about this year, right? We talk about what we've done in a year, and it's more than I would have accomplished by myself, 100%. Um, and that's if I look at like, you you have a profit and loss at work, you have, a balancing statement, you have your pros and cons in relationships. And would I be further without these guys? Absolutely not. And that's what, if I were to like take myself out as El Presidente, as they call me, um, you know, if I were to be like, is this beneficial? Of course, because on my worst day, these guys are there to help out. I did have a struggle day recently where I was like, why am I doing this? Nobody cares about my book. And Dan was like, are you kidding me? Um, work was sucking, everything was sucking, and I was like, why bother? You get the As a creative, you always have that moment of like, why do I bother doing this? And it takes someone within our group to like remind you. And I do need to hurry up, but I did want to say this too. We talk about the future of homebrewed comics and where we're going, what we're doing. I'm collaborating now as a writer with these two guys. Um, I have not collaborated with Dennis yet. That's hopefully going to happen down the road when he's not doing 15 other projects. But for the first time, I'm actually writing stories. And when you write and you actually partner, not just business, right? When you actually partner creative with people, you see a different side. Like Casey's been part of one project with me and Dan and Brad, and then Drew's part of this other project that we're working on. Um, and those are slow but steady because other things take precedence over. Um, but what's been really cool is seeing how we work together, not just professionally, but also creatively. And I like that because those, while you could say they have similar relationship characteristics, they're completely different. Writing something with someone and working with someone are two different things because that creative process is very intimate, very personal. You know, like you write this big piece and you really like it, and someone says, that doesn't really work. You know, I'm used to it on my side because my friends are the first one. My character shows up in the comic and they're making fun of him because he's short. Like they cut me down. If you talk about being humbled, my guys humble me every day. So when I'm with one of these guys, and I can openly say, "Hey, I don't really like that right there." I remember Drew sent me a script, and I was like, "Hey, can we edit this and do this?" And he was like, "Oh, that's a good catch." Not, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a good catch. Okay." And then he rewrites it and sends it back. I'm like, "Oh, that reads a lot better." You know? Or like me, Dan, and Kate, we're crunching all these ideas that get thrown away 15,000 times till I beat my head against the wall. And but like we're still in there, we're in that mud. That's a whole other project that I'm not going to go into too many details on. But like with Drew, I'm in this like almost creative euphoria of, oh, this is so much fun, and then I get to go down in the mud with Dan and Casey, and like I feel like it's World War II and we're going through the trenches together, and it's two different experiences, but it gives me so much different perspective on each of them individually too, because if you can work together, and I think that's one thing a lot of other publishers don't get to experience, is working together creatively and on the business side. um, you asked about plans for the future. I mean, I told Dan today, I'm not doing April next year. It's too hard for me. I work in taxes. I keep trying really hard. Like I can do it. I can't. I just need, you know what I mean? Like I just need to back down and be like, May is my month, guys. Like just let's have Crit be May. You guys can have April or June, but Crit will be May moving forward because I really, I just can't do it. There's too much on my plate at that time, and I am known for putting too much on my plate already. So let's just say what it is. So we look at things 6 months to a year out. um Hey looks, this book Drew and I are working on, we announced a year ago, and we're not putting stress on it. Him and I have talked many times. We don't want to burn out on that title because it's something that means a lot to us and we have a lot of faith in. So we're taking our time. Another project we have to take time on. And what all of this with Homebrewed means is we're internally growing with, and this is something that I really wanted to say on this live with you. We're able to grow internally without going the easy route, which is, hey, let's just pick somebody else that has another story to put in here while we do our own thing, and we'll just baby it. No, like like when when Image, for instance, Todd McFarlane put out that not Ghost, what's that white Spawnish looking character? I forget which
Oh,
character.
yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember what it's called right now.
But that grew eventually into more Spawn comics, and now he's in the Spawn universe, and like you grew organically there. That's what I think of is like he didn't just go out and absorb another comic that Todd McFarlane has his name on. He grew the brand. And so I think if people ask what's Homebrewed Comics doing, we're just going to continue to grow this brand, but we're doing it at a pace that's manageable, it's smart, and we will get burned out, but it's not meant to burn us out. You know,
Mhm.
you're creatively, you always reach a burnout no matter what you're doing. Okay. If you're a video gamer, you hit a video. I'm a gamer too. I'll be playing my favorite game. I'm like, man, I just don't want to turn it on right now.
Mhm.
We'll hit that. But what's great is the other guys will be here. And I wish Dennis was here because Dennis is putting out Mama's Boy at the end of the year. And you talk about like going neck to neck and all that stuff. I think we're going to do it side by side with a Bigfoot Knows Karate book, if I'm not
Wow.
mistaken, right?
Yes, we are.
So
Yeah, we're going to do that on, yeah.
and we don't compete. Okay. There's no competition, nothing. Dan and I proved that before we even did this. And that's something I will hold till the day I'm done making comics. Dan and I were not a brand. We were not tied together. We weren't even really close friends at this point in time. We were friendly, but I didn't think of Dan as like my good friend, my business partner. Him and I could be on a live. We would get along great, but it wasn't like I called him and had 2-hour conversations to where I drove around in circles so I didn't have to pull in my parking lot like I do now. You know? But I will never forget the day that I saw him post his Kickstarter date and I said, man, I just chose mine today. And I didn't get mad. I didn't say, I'm going to compete against Bigfoot Knows Karate. I said, hey, Dan, do you want to do this? Do you want to? I don't mind changing my date, but if you want, how about we just launch together and do this really cool thing that nobody else does? And I got to say, like, we crushed it. We showed the indie community a lot there. And I'm really stoked that we're continuing to show the indie community more and more.
Yeah. You guys are awesome.
Dude, that was a good night, dude. We were both going after what, $1,500 or something like that, and we got it in like 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes each. I mean, it was like, yeah, I mean, the look, I mean, we've been successful on our own. We're being even more successful as a group, and we're finding strengths out of each other that we didn't know, out of ourselves, that the other ones are pointing out to us and we didn't even know existed. You know what I mean? They push me to work harder. I think that group is good about that, is, you got to level up. I mean, you got to level up to keep up with these guys. They're putting out amazing books, and it's like when we're doing, Casey and I are working on the Little Bigfoot book, it's like, well, okay, but yeah, Tin Can just came out. We got to crush it on the next one because, you know what I'm saying? Because the next book is out and you're just like, shit, they're up in their game all the time. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. So let's keep it going. I like it. I like that.
Well, I appreciate you guys so much for your time, your energy, your knowledge, as always. Link to everything and all of their projects is in the description. Go ahead, get everything. I promise you, you won't regret it. And thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Kat.
much.
Thank you,
Thanks
Kat.
for having us on.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you again to Homebrewed Comics, Drew, Chris, Casey, and Dan for coming on to the show. And if you enjoyed our conversation, you'll enjoy this one next.